Hi, Johnny. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, first off, I just wanted to see, before we get to your mission, have you had a chance to watch the splashdown of your colleagues, Butch and Sunny, the video of that, and, what's your reaction to their safe return?
I haven't seen the full thing. I've seen some clips. I feel really happy that my friends and colleagues are back from their mission. We all are used to public service and doing what's best for the mission and for the public. And it's always great to know that friends, the people that I care about, are finally home to see their loved ones.
I want to get to your mission. Talk to me about some of the training that you're doing right now in Star City. How are you gearing up for this launch?
So I'm currently in Star City working with my Soyuz colleagues. So there are two other cosmonauts that I'll be in the Soyuz capsule going to space with. And we're currently going through final checkout training simulations to ensure that we've passed all the qualifications and that we're safe and competent. Also going through some final ISS segment type of training for emergency procedures. And after all that's done, we're going to be entering quarantine in Baikonur, where we're going to do the final checkout and get to see our actual vehicle, the ones that we're going to ride in space.
Yeah, what are you, most looking forward to for this mission? What are some of your goals?
It's hard to articulate. I've been with NASA now for almost 8 years, and there is so much work that goes on behind the scenes to make every mission you see, whether they're manned or unmanned. And just to have a small contribution in that is really meaningful for me. I am a huge believer and proponent in public service and being able to share the science that we get to do on station, get to contribute to inspiring the next generation. And so my answer is all of the above. Of course, I'm looking forward to the view outside the Soyuz capsule, outside the ISS. I'm also looking forward to putting to fruition so much of the work that many doctoral students around the globe have spent their entire careers to make a scientific experiment. And as astronauts, we get to be a part of that, putting that to fruition, conducting those experiments, and sending that information back to the ground.
What is it like, working in Russia right now, working with Russian colleagues on this mission during these times?
So, I think that this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Apollo Soyuz program. And Soyuz is a Russian word for union. It's also the name of their space vehicle. And I think it's the perfect word to describe the collaboration that we've had between our two countries for many, many decades, and certainly for the entire existence of the space station. To me and to a lot of my colleagues, the International Space Station is the most incredible human feat of engineering that's transcended borders that humanity has ever created. And we get to live it and work in it every day. And so when it comes to collaboration with our Russian colleagues, at the end of the day, we're all humans doing our parts, trying to make this world a better place. And that's no different with my friends that I get to go to space with, my Russian cosmonauts. And so it's a huge honor to not only be a representative for America, but an ambassador between our two nations.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the experiments that you hope to conduct on the ISS?
Yes. So there's a lot, right? And I think the one that I am super interested in is called Cypher. Now, we have a lot of acronyms, and I honestly can't even remember the specific name of Cypher. But that's not super important. What I think is super cool about this experiment is that if you're familiar with the Scott Kelly Year in Space mission and how the results of that mission were compared with his twin, it yielded a lot of information about how our bodies respond to long duration space, but it also created a lot of questions. And so that science experiment kind of prompted NASA and our international partners to say, hey, how do we find the answers to these questions? And the strategy was we need more data. We need more than an N of one. And so by having more participants, NASA astronauts, and having an integrated approach across all the systems, and most importantly, data sharing, astronauts are able to contribute their bodies and their science experiments for this. And so what Cypher is it started over a year ago for me. And it examines astronauts leading up to flight. And we test everything from the physiological, the medical, the behavioral, the exercise performance, the cognitive performance. We measure blood samples, bone densities, and we track that throughout an astronaut's career, not just pre-flight, but during flight and post-flight. And we hope to be able to, that all this data sharing and this integrated approach is going to answer a lot of questions that we need before we start committing ourselves to long duration, multi-year space flights to Mars and beyond.
And then another question we had was during your 8 months in space, do you anticipate doing a spacewalk?
There are a few scheduled, but at NASA, the name of the game is adapting, and so things can always change. There are some planned upgrades for the solar arrays as well as the alpha magnetic spectrometer, or AMS for short, and I hope to be able to take a part of that. And that's probably the thing that I'm looking forward to the most out of this upcoming mission.
Well, Jonny, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. when you co-align those things, it's not work. And so I do love reading. I do love studying. I do love doing the things that I'm very, very interested in. I think
Well,
it's a simplification, but co-aligning your values and your passions with work restructures your dopamine pathways in a way that makes it able to work for long periods of time and what you really, really care about, because it's not work at the end of the day if you love it.
yeah, that's true. I love what I do, and it certainly doesn't seem like work to me. So I do get that, but this is somewhat exceptional. Let me change gears. Given all the training you've gone through in your various career paths, what's it been like training for a Soyuz flight in Star City? I mean, I wouldn't think that would pose much of a challenge unless learning Russian, of course, is always a challenge. I mean, what's been the toughest part of that uh, from your perspective?
Learning Russian, like that
Yeah.
did not take me too long to think of that. All the training here is done in Russian. The teamwork, the collaboration, that transcends language barriers. And in fact, actually, my two cosmic colleagues, Alexei and Sergey, speak phenomenal English. But teamwork and collaboration, they're not unique to Americans. They're not unique to Russians. It's it's just something as professionals and as professionals we arrive at this great opportunity of a job we get to do to explore the cosmos, and we understand that space is hard, and through working together we can achieve great things. So to answer your question, the hardest part was certainly learning Russian. Some of the easier parts were getting to become part of the crew and getting to know and learn to work with them and trust them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your impression of your two crewmates is. One's obviously a skilled veteran, the other's a rookie. Are you guys friends personally, or is it pretty much a professional relationship?
We are friends. I mean, we're very, very professional. We work well together. We are all three professional pilots, and so have shared backgrounds as well. But personally, I mean, I've had Alexei and Sergey over for dinner, and they've done the same thing for me. So, our relationships are personal, and there's a lot of trust and friendship there.
Have you learned anything about Russia and the Russian people that was a surprise to you?
You know, I think I was surprised to find how much commonality there are between people both at home in the States and in Russia. Now, granted, I do spend the majority of my time in Star City, which is kind of a I don't know if suburb is the right word, but it's a sectioned off area, like the northeastern part of Moscow. But it's really not a surprise. But the kind of just generosity, compassion I've found in working with my Russian colleagues, it's the same as I find at NASA. So it's been really seamless transition. I mean, we spend a lot of time, we as in NASA astronauts assigned to Soyuz missions as ambassadors, we spend a lot of time in Russia. And there's really a seamless transition when we go back to Houston or Star City.
What's your impression of the Soyuz rocket and the spacecraft? I asked that in the context, we all saw a Crew Dragon land yesterday, and it looks so futuristic and all that with the touchscreen displays. And the Soyuz, the Russians don't reinvent the wheel every 5 years like we seem to. They've got a reliable spacecraft that just works, even if it doesn't seem as maybe sophisticated as what you see in the West. What's your impression as somebody who's going to ride the rocket and fly that capsule?
So it's a really, you make a really interesting point. And I think it just goes to different cultural approaches to the same problem. As I grew up in the analog to digital era. I feel like I was born at one of the most interesting times in the world. I got to see the rise of, I was born in like the VCR age, and always as a kid, just tinkering, taking things apart or setting up my parents' VCR. And then I got to see that transition to DVDs and the digital era and the internet and all of that. And I just love technology. So as an American, I love the idea, the modern approach to tinkering and upgrading. there's also something to be said about reliability, or as the saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The Soyuz is the amount of testing and the reliability the Soyuz has shown over decades is unsurpassed and is absolutely admirable. And so I think it just highlights two very different approaches, both very effective, but unique in each of their own ways. And I think that's just a reflection of cultural approaches.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always ask astronauts how they and their families face risk, since riding on a rocket seems riskier than what most people experience. But that doesn't seem reasonable to ask a former SEAL a question about risk. But what about your family? I mean, I don't know how old your kids are, but I can't imagine they see space flight as riskier than combat. But I think most people would view it as a risk. How do you deal with that with your family?
I have three kids, and they are from the ages of 8, 10, and 14. You know, having this discussion, and actually, I think relationships, which actually I shouldn't be surprised of it, but the hardest part in my rookie experience approaching spaceflight is actually the relationships we have. I mean, as humans, we have, relationships define who we are. They help us get to where we are, and we wouldn't be the same people without them. And I love my family dearly, and they love me. And communicating why Daddy has to go away for 8 months was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. But I also try to impress the importance of sacrifices and fighting for what you believe in. And I think that is something that all public servants at NASA do, not just astronauts, but the flight directors and the engineers and instructors. We all fight really hard for what we believe in because we think it's worth it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Is the family going to be making it to Baikonur for your launch?
They are, and I'm excited to see them.
And here's a softball standard astronaut question. What are you looking forward to the most about finally getting up and to work aboard the International Space Station?
I really hope that I get to contribute to a spacewalk. I think physically that is one of the harder things that we get to do, and I am very interested in physical and mental challenges, and a spacewalk is that. And it's also very visceral. I mean, you are out in the abyss of space. Of course, you're connected to the space station, but you're in a spacesuit, and you get to feel through the glove the handrails or the equipment that you're manipulating, and it's something that I have really, as a lot of other astronauts in our careers, have worked a lot in the neutral buoyancy lab on the ground to prepare for, and so hopefully can put that training to use.
And the last question for me, given your past accomplishment, I'd imagine a trip to the moon wouldn't be out of the question for you. Is that something that's in the back of your mind? I mean, I know you guys are always focused on the next mission, and that's to the ISS, but is a moon flight something you would do if you had the opportunity, or are you satisfied with low Earth orbit?
So I'm going to be real with you. I think if you asked 100% of astronauts this question, I think 100% of them would say, of course they'd participate, they contribute. I think what makes astronauts or NASA professional astronauts unique is that we raised our right hands and swore an oath. And our motto in the astronaut office is that we fly in space for the betterment of humankind. Nowhere in that does it talk about what we want, what I want. It's for what's best for the space program and for the public. And so absolutely I'd be interested in doing that. But I think that would, in the context of what's best for the space program, the country, and our international partners, all I could ask for is to do my very best and have a contribution in that in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean being on the mission.
Understood. Jonny, I'm out of time. Listen, have a great flight. Look forward to talking to you in space, and best of luck.
Thanks, sir. Oh, thank you. Oh, this. Everything going okay on your end, Beth? I think I should start right.
I'm just letting you know it's shorter here.
Okay. Okay, any
Hi, hello. This is Freddie Giger from Interplanetary Television. I just wanted to sit down a little bit with you to, well, chat about your career, know a little bit, give a little bit of a personal taste, a little understanding of who is Jonny Kim in Jonny Kim in private, and how your journey as an astronaut has been. So one of the things that I read in your bio was that you specifically decided to become an astronaut when you met with astronaut physician Scott Parzynski when you were studying at Harvard Medical School. So what was so unique about Scott that made you decide that you wanted to become an astronaut no matter what?
I have a lot. It's a great question. So I have a lot of thanks for Scott. And before kind of answer that question, I want to talk about the gift of inspiration. And that's really one of the main reasons why I wanted to be an astronaut. It's because I think astronauts have this unfettered access to a platform that inspires a lot of people. And the reason why inspiration is important is because when you're inspired, you're able to dream. And if you're able to dream, you're able to make those dreams a reality. I never once thought about being an astronaut seriously. I'm sure all kids kind of do, but for me, it wasn't a serious thought. When I met Scott, he planted that seed in my brain of, hey, this is something you'd probably enjoy and you're qualified, certainly qualified to be competitive. You should apply. And until someone had said that to me, I had never come up with that myself. There was also a lot of other things around that same time. So there were some, I think Hollywood just got together and said, let's make some really cool space movies around that time of year. And so there were some pretty cool space movies around that time of year. And also I watched NASA's first launch of Orion, and that was super well documented. And it showed up on my YouTube feed, and it was really, really inspirational, and started to give me an idea. This seed that grew into a plant of, hey, this might be a serious reality that I could work and contribute towards that makes an impactful difference, which is what I really wanted to do. And that's the reason why I was in medicine.
Okay. So in June 7th, 2017, you were selected as part of a group of 12 astronaut candidates out of 18,300 applicants to join the NASA Astronaut Group 2022. What was the most difficult part of the astronaut selection that really made you either want to quit at times or made you want to persevere?
So the selection, it's, um, it's a pretty unique selection process. It is not something that I had seen earlier. Certainly the selections I've been a part of in the military were structured very, very differently. The best advice I got before I went for the tryouts, for the selection process, was be myself. Just be authentic and be the very best version of yourself. And it's the same advice I give to other hopefuls that are trying to be astronauts. And so I think, certainly when it comes to any kind of job or occupation you're applying for, you want to put your best foot forward, or you want to be maybe what you're thinking in your head is what others want. But oftentimes the right answer is being ourselves, being our true, authentic of selves, and just the very best versions of that. And so I think that was, I think there was not a lot of confidence, at least for me, going through that selection process of am I good enough? And so that's probably what I think about when I heard your question. This is the first thought that came to mind.
But what made you persevere? Like, I'm sure there were ups and downs, and when you were down, what was the thought? Maybe you were thinking about your kids, maybe, I don't know, something that made sense, gave you purpose, and made you want to persevere. What was it? Like, what were the thoughts? Because it's 18,000 people, 18,000 other applicants who are competing with you. So not everybody is like you, of course. Not everybody went to the military and had what you had and what you have. So for those who don't have what you have, what gave you the extra push, the extra boost to say, listen, it doesn't matter. It's meant to be hard, and I will persevere.
So it's a good question. I mean, I think I throw that out in, like, why do any of us persevere? I think we all have had severe challenges in our lives, right? And we all overcome. My favorite quote that I've often used for when times are hard, including this selection process that you're talking about, is "This too will pass." And it's a solemn reminder to myself that no matter what we're dealing with, whatever struggles or challenges, or if we're just in a hole we feel like we can't get out, if you can remember all the times previously where you have had those struggles and where you are today, it puts things into perspective. So that's probably the best thing I'd say to you, and I think that's what a lot of other people who are going through that did as well.
Okay, so now you're in the astronaut training program after June 7th, 2017, up until now, which will be April 8th, 2025. It's going to be 8 years. 8 years of your life training as an astronaut. What were the most important milestones for you? How did it feel? How does it still feel today for you? Was it too long? What were the uncertainties? What did you like the most or hated the most in the astronaut training? Give us, please, a taste of what awaits any astronaut candidate.
So to help, in order to answer that question, I should probably explain a little bit about just the career span of an astronaut. So certainly when a candidate first arrives at NASA, the first 2 years are spent qualifying to become an astronaut. And then when you're assigned a mission, usually about a year and a half before a mission, before you fly to space, you're preparing solely for that mission. But outside of those time periods, you're supporting active missions in future development. And so that's what I was doing from the years, essentially 2000 to late 2023. I was supporting ongoing missions. And so one, of course, a milestone was actually passing the candidate selection process or the candidate training in early 2020. Another milestone was getting to see my NASA classmates go to space. and getting to watch the smiles on their face when the hatch opened, and you could see so much of the work and their dreams coming to fruition, and getting to see them come back and talk about that and share those human experiences. Those are all very, very important milestones. You asked another question, was it hard to wait? And I can say that Xena and myself are the only two American astronauts from our class that have yet to fly to space. And I can confidently say that waiting has not been hard, because we are all here for the greater good of flying to space to bring that back home. And so it's not about us. It's not about our individual missions, but it's about our place as a cog in this entire machine we have at NASA.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
You're
sharing
welcome.
your thoughts on. Thank you.
Hello,
Hey, Johnny, can you hear me?
loud and clear. Hi, Mike. Can you hear me? Roger that.
Well, Dr. Kim, I just wanted to again say. Didn't you say you were coming? Hi there, Dr. Kim. My name is James Dowling Healy with West Hartford Community Interactive. I just want to say it's a real treat to have you with us today.
James, please call me Johnny.
Yes, sir. So we noticed from the press release, they talk about you're going to be doing some tech demos when you're up there in space. And my director, Jennifer Evans, is very excited about that. Are there any pieces of technology you're particularly interested in working with?
All of the above. And I'll give you something more specific. Tech demo. I think the human body is a tech demo. But I could go ad nauseum about that. There's a lot of experiments that I'll be a part of that will help give NASA and our colleagues a lot of answers to how the human body responds to long duration spaceflight, which is going to be important if we're going to go do multi-year missions, especially to Mars and beyond. Tech demos. There's a lot of furnaces on the space station, and one of the things that I will potentially be working with is a lot of material science and how alloys are created in microgravity. And so I'm not an expert on this. Just we'll be an operator for some of the machinery and help hopefully conduct some of the experiments. But these furnaces I think the idea of the experiment is to hopefully see if we can create new types of alloys with favorable properties and how microgravity might have a part in some of that manufacturing process.
That sounds great. I'm a big fan of when the spin-offs portion of your office releases information about new projects. And it sounds like that's going to be applicable to the work you're doing up there as well. Do you have any personally favorite spin-offs that you should suggest people would look into?
So I think the spin-offs that I'm super interested in are the ones that have real life benefits to people on Earth. I mean, to be clear, all the spin-offs have some sort of benefit to bring back to planet Earth. I think the one that can kind of hit home for a lot of people that might be watching this is cancer research and cancer drugs. So for those watching, really the only variable that is essentially changed in this national laboratory that we call the International Space Station is microgravity, or just kind of the lack of gravity, right? Otherwise, the composition of the atmosphere, the molecules of air, the pressure, that's all meant to more or less mimic that on Earth. And so when we have that one variable, that's like the entire concept of what kind of science experiments can we learn about. Keytruda, which is a cancer treatment drug, there was a collaboration effort between pharmaceuticals on Earth and the space station to see how the absence of microgravity can affect protein crystallization. And so what you don't have with the lack of gravity or microgravity is you don't have a lot of the buoyancy convection forces that drive some of the protein crystallization that happens on Earth. And so what astronauts were able to do was they were able to create essentially an enhanced protein crystallization of this drug that was able to increase safety and efficacy for patients. And then in turn, scientists on the ground were able to mimic manufacturing processes to kind of capture some of those benefits. And so that's just one of many different things astronauts have done that have had real world benefits back on home.
I have to admit, when I was looking at the list, when I was preparing my questions, 2,000 plus items, that's amazing. And then there's the ones people are probably familiar with, like Mylar and maybe artificial limbs and cochlear implants. And the one that got me is just a few hours ago, I was using a Tempur-based pillow. So it's, from the basic to the incredibly important, like cancer medications and the like. My understanding is you're planning to be up in space for approximately 8 months. And I know that there's concerns about bone loss and physiology changes with long duration spaceflight, like you mentioned. Given your background as a doctor and SEAL and now astronaut, are there any particular exercises that you think are essential both up in space and on Earth that most people should do if they have the time?
Squat
Like physical
a
exercise.
lot.
Yeah, a
No,
lot of
it was
exercise.
little tongue in cheek, but seriously, squatting, the deadlifts, any kind of compound movements that where you are acting against an axial load, which is what ARED does for us on the International Space Station. The ARED is the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, and it can produce up to 600 pounds of force that's attached to a barbell that then you can imagine you can do a myriad of exercises of compound movements. And so this resistance, this strength training provides a stimulus for our musculoskeletal system to ensure that we are not wasting away to atrophy and bone loss. And a lot of those same things apply for down here on Earth.
Fantastic. We're near the middle point of most semesters, and I teach some STEM students. And I know many of them, if there's any words of encouragement or suggestions for study skills, I'm sure they'd love to hear them from you, if you have any.
So much of schooling, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, is not so much the material that you're learning, but how to learn. And so, I've changed my philosophy approaching school, and I think ultimately each person needs to find what works best for them. I do think a general approach that I kind of take whenever I'm learning something new is just to kind of take a step back, see the forest from the trees, and come up with a really good question that I'm trying to find the answer to, and never skimping on the basics. The basics to me, whether that's in chemistry, biology, or biochemistry, mathematics, they form the very foundation of all of the advanced concepts. And a common mistake is to kind of go into those advanced concepts without truly understanding the basics. I think those are the things. And of course, consistency. Oftentimes our brains are not really wired to just to cram last minute. It's just, we don't form neural synapses that well like that.
That's excellent advice. And I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today. Good luck on your mission, and you're welcome back anytime. Good luck, and thank you again, sir. Have a great day.
Thanks, sir. You too.
Bye now.
Hi, Mike. You there?
Hey, Johnny, how you doing? Mike Pace here with Live Now from Fox. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, doing well, doing well. Thanks so much for taking the opportunity out for us. We really appreciate it. And first off, just let us know how your preparation is going for a big moment for you in a couple of weeks.
It's going great. So I'm currently in Star City, Russia, and we completed our final qual sims last week. And so the commission that governs a lot of the space operations here gave us their nod of approval to continue. And so we're going to enter quarantine here in a couple of days, going to go to Baikonur. And I think that's where things are going to start getting real, getting to see the spacecraft that we're going to be in.
Now that is very, very exciting here, and just tell us a little bit about your journey here. You came up through the ranks back in 2017. Just let us know just how that journey came from then to now.
I'll try to be concise. So yeah, so I got here in 2017, and my experience before that was in the Navy as an enlisted special operator, and then turned to a commissioned naval officer. And let's see, so first couple of years were astronaut training, and then after kind of the initial graduation, not many people know this, but when you're not directly working towards a space flight, you are supporting other space flights and supporting future development for future missions. And so that's what I initially did for the first initial years after I graduated training. There was a short stint where I was able to return to the Navy for flight school, and but since then have been assigned to Expedition 73 about a year and a half ago, and that has brought me to the present.
That is exciting, and just tell us some of the different scientific missions that you'll be doing up on the ISS during your time up in space.
So one of the biggest experiments that I'm really proud to be a part of is actually me and my human body. So there's this experiment called CIPHER, and it's of course, like a lot of things in NASA, it's an acronym, and it stands for the Complement of Integrated Protocols for Human Exploration Research. It is a mouthful. This experiment is super, super cool when you look at the history of it. And so just a quick background, this study was born from the twin year in space study with Scott and Mark Kelly. And so those data points gave us a lot of information about how the human body might respond to long duration space flight, but it was only one data point. And so NASA, we collected our heads with our international partners, and we thought, well, how do we get more information that's attributable to other astronauts, especially if we're trying to get to Mars, which would take multiple years. And so they came up with this study where we are going to investigate different astronauts, different backgrounds, and get everything from the physiological, the mental, behavioral, and all the way from pre-flight, in-flight to post-flight, and follow an astronaut through their career. So it's very, very extensive. I've had to submit my body for science research many times, and that includes blood, hair, skin samples, saliva, everything, you name it. And that'll continue. And it's a huge honor because there are so many teams, not just in the States, but around the world that are collaborating for this research project to answer really important questions.
That is amazing. They'll know so much about you already. And lastly, what did you think of the splashdown yesterday and the journey for those two astronauts? That was really a different experience from what they were thinking.
You know, as professional astronauts, and well, specifically as professional public servants, right? We raise our right hand and swear an oath to do what's best for the Constitution and the American public. And part of that happens to do what the mission calls for. And so there has been a precedent for astronauts being on station longer than they originally intended. In fact, a good friend of mine, Frank Rubio, was extended from 6 months to over a year for his space mission when a leak developed on his space vehicle. But it's, the human emotion of seeing your friends and the smiles on their face, whether they're opening a hatch to the International Space Station for the very first time, or they're opening a hatch and seeing the Earth or those smells. I think that's just got to be a human rush of emotions of being home that is that I imagine is really hard to articulate. And so I'm very happy for them to be back from their mission and to be back with their families.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think it also paints a good picture that not everything goes as planned, right? And it's about the way that you overcome those obstacles in life. I think a lot of people could look at those two astronauts and think, yeah, that's life isn't linear the way that you go from goal to goal, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, Jonny Kim. We appreciate it here on Live Now from Fox. Safe travels to you, and we are wishing you the very best on your mission.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Hi, Mohammed. This is Jonny Kim.
Hi, Astronaut Jonny. Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your time.
Of course, my pleasure.
It's a great honor, sir. My first question, sir, that's your first space mission. What has inspired you to become an astronaut?
So I did not really have much aspiration to be an astronaut early in my life. It came to me later in life. I would say the element of exploration, which I think is very, very inherent in our DNA as humans, regardless of where we're from, to explore the unknown and contribute to that was very, very alluring to me. I would say the most important thing for me was the opportunity to inspire the next generation. And the reason why inspiration is very, very important to me is because I think one of the greatest gifts we can give to each other is inspiration and dreaming. Because without dreams or inspiration, it is very, very difficult to make hard things happen. And oftentimes, the best things in life, you have to fight really hard for. So, a lot of those reasons really came together for me in inspiring me to want to be an astronaut.
Gotcha. Thank you. And can you tell us a little more about your experiments you will conduct on the ISS and how will they support the future mission to the Moon and Mars and Artemis program?
Mm-hmm. So one of the most important experiments is called CIPHER. It's an acronym and it stands for the Complement of Integrated Protocols for Human Exploration Research. And what CIPHER is a multi-pronged international collaborative approach to understanding how humans respond to long-duration space flight and the implications of how that affects future long-duration space travel. And we're talking about on the order of years. And the reason this is important is because if we don't fully understand how humans respond to these stimuli and these stressors, it's going to be hard to want to go to Mars and beyond. And so I, as well as some other the astronauts on this mission, are part of this experiment. It is a lot of, it's not just covering the medical, or it covers the behavioral, the performance from exercise and cognition, Um, and this started well before we went to space, or before I go to space. It started pre-flight, it continues in flight and post-flight. And so I'm hoping that I can help contribute to getting some of these answers to these really important questions.
Gotcha. Thank you. And would you like to be part of a Moon or Mars mission in the future?
I think if you asked every single astronaut, and you know what? I think I would be more concerned if you asked an astronaut and the answer was not yes. I think we all would love to be a part of an exploration like that. But I think more importantly, what really drives us is the core of our mission, and that is supporting space operations for the betterment of humankind. And that is not specific to individuals. It is about the team, about our core values, and the overall mission. And so, absolutely, any astronaut would love to be a part of that. But I think more importantly, astronauts just want to be able to contribute what they can in their fields to make that mission a reality.
I love your answer. Thank you. And in your opinion, sir, why the international cooperation is so important in space exploration, especially in the ISS?
I mean, the ISS has been up in space for almost 25 years. It's an orbiting laboratory, the only one we have like that. And it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for an international collaboration. I'm very biased, but I think it is one of the greatest human engineering feats we have ever done in our span on this earth. And that it was only capable under international collaboration, I think just reflects the values and how important that kind of teamwork is. That there's a famous saying, which I'm sure you've heard, and it goes something along the lines of, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. I think the International Space Station truly reflects that principle.
Gotcha. And I'm just a concern, and yeah, what have you ever visited any Arab countries? What do you think about the growing role of Arab countries like UAE or Saudi Arabia in space exploration?
So I think we're stronger together. And as you know, some of the most recent astronaut candidates have been from the European Space Agency, but also from UAE, and they have made phenomenal partners. And so I think just kind of reflects in our office at Houston and NASA, we have astronauts from the spectrum of the globe, right? And we work together. And I was just actually one of my more recent MBL runs, which is the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And that involves being in a spacesuit underwater to help prepare for the rigors of a spacewalk. And the last one I conducted was with Haza, who is, as you know, a UAE astronaut. And, we work so well together, and I think reflects all those principles I was talking about regarding collaboration and international teamwork.
Okay, I will not take any more. My last question, sir. As a Korean American, how has your background influenced your journey, and what advice do you have for immigrant children aspiring to become an astronaut?
So, I'm very proud of my Korean heritage, and I'm a first generation Korean American. My parents were immigrants from South Korea and settled in the West Coast of California. But first and foremost, I am a very proud American. And I think as Americans, we get our biggest strengths when we draw on what makes us unique and what makes us strong. And for me, it was incorporating so much of my roots, but also my American identity into working hard for what I believe in and what I believe is worth fighting in. And so if I were to give advice to really anyone, irrespective of their background, is you have to first dream, and you have to work hard for those dreams, and you can't stop when things don't go your way. Understanding that failure and getting no's are part of the process. I think those are fundamental values that everyone should follow, and those who have walked the path understand.
Astronaut Johnny, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Shiva. This is Jonny Kim.
Hi, NASA astronaut Jonny Kim. It's incredible to meet you. I'm a freelance journalist, a neuroscientist, and also the MIT classmate of Jaws, who is your colleague in the Turtles and completed the Crew 7 mission a while back. I also worked at Mass General Hospital, Harvard Medical School at main campus, and also Charlestown Navy Yard, Navy Huya. Boston is a great place to work and cultivate one's love of space. And I was wondering, how has a biomedical background and your medical training at HMS and MGH helped you prepare for space?
Okay, before I go answering your questions, that was a whole, I wish we had more time. How much time we got? Super cool to hear that shared history we have. I have so many questions, but okay. So sorry, I got a little excited. So how has my biomedical background helped with being a NASA astronaut? Was that the question? I may have lost you. That's the question I'm going to answer. So, I think the approach to solving problems and pulling apart threads, I think as a neuroscientist, you'd appreciate this. Deconstructing problems into their most simplest components, whether that's from an engineering or a biomedical perspective, is the first step into understanding a problem and then coming up with a solution. And in fact, actually, a lot of that for me started not just in the military, but also with my mathematics background, is kind of understanding the logic and the approach to a problem in order to come up with a solution. And I feel like a lot of that is very attributable to life as an astronaut, where we encounter all sorts of different problems where we need to exercise many of the different things that we've learned.
Yeah, okay, so my next question for you as a former Bostonian, when you got the call that NASA had selected you to be an astronaut, you were grocery shopping with your wife. So I'm just wondering, what grocery store was that in Boston? Can you take us back to that day? I've been grocery shopping in Boston a lot, and there's nothing that exciting really happens there.
Which one would you guess? And what I miss most from this is the cornbread. The fresh cornbread that they would have is so sweet and amazing.
The fresh cornbread of the grocery store? Oh man, I really don't remember. Where do they have the best cornbread? The MGH cafeteria used to have really good cornbread often.
They did have one. So I was in Market Basket. The one near Waltham. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I missed the cornbread from there. And so
I never tried it.
Going through that day, I mean, it was life-changing. I knew the call was coming that day. I was very, very excited to get the call, regardless of the answer. And I'm still very, very thankful. I think remembering that day, just in general, remembering where we came from and some of the excitement we brought to our occupations, and so important, especially when times are tough. And so I think about that day often, and it makes me smile.
That's so great. I have been shopping at Market Basket many times, and I never thought that you could. That's so exciting. Okay, so you talk a lot about your public service. It's really important for scientists and people in the healthcare field to be involved in public service, and we don't talk about like biomedical professionals as much because usually it's like people with like a government public service background. So what do you think the role of us STEM peeps is in public service?
It's sharing the love of what made us want to become scientists or seekers of truth, or utilizing the scientific method. I mean, the scientific method is one of the greatest tools humankind has created, and it's because of just that level of humility we bring to a problem, and a humility that we don't know the answer and we can be proven wrong, as in opening our perspective and exercising our critical thinking. And to me, those traits, humility, critical thinking, they are so important in our societies. And so what can STEM scientists bring to the table with respect to public service is sharing some of those tools and that joy and inspiring the next wave, the next generation of scientists. That's what I think is our duty.
Thank you, NASA astronaut Jonny Kim. I wish you the best of luck on your mission, and thank you for advancing science on behalf of humanity at Astra.
Thank you. Thank you, Shiva. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise. Take care.
Than the RAV4 and CRV. It also holds its value better than any other SUV
10,
in its class,
9,
according to JD Power.
8, 7,
Get special low rates on
6,
a new Subaru Forester
5,
during the Subaru and Love to
4,
Love event. Going
3,
on now.
2,
Yep, your
1.
worst nightmare. Your car broke down. Now you're worried if it's going to cost you a fortune in repair bills. Unless you already. When you're protected with a plan through Car Shield, the process is smooth like ice and done in as little as 3 steps. 1. First, the tow truck takes your car to the shop. The cost of towing covered when you got a plan through Car Shield. Next, you probably need to get around while your vehicle's being repaired, right? 2. Plans through Car Shield have rental car options too. Then comes the best part. 3. When you pick up your vehicle, you don't have a big repair bill to worry about. Car Shield administrators get your covered repairs paid directly to the shop, so you're back on the road with no worry. Call now to get an affordable plan through Car Shield for your vehicle before it's too late. When you call Car Shield, whether you got a small problem like a power...
Hey, Johnny, this is Ted at Weather Channel Control Room. Do you hear me, sir?
Ted, loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Hold on just one moment.
Car Shield is the #1 auto protection.
Would you count to 10 for the audio check?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Very much.
2,
Okay, we're about
1.
3:40 out of the commercial break. 3:40 out of the commercial break. There'll be just a quick setup in front of you. It'll be about 10 or 15 seconds, and you'll be speaking with Molly McCullum and Alex Wallace. Alex is a male. Molly and Alex.
Call Car Shield.
Okay?
Okay.
There is a delay, so we'll try to answer the question, ask you questions very kind of simply, so forth. So you'll have about 3.5 minutes for the interview. If you hear me jump in and say the word wrap, just finish your thought in about 10 or 15 seconds. Okay, sir?
You got it.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Oh, great, Grandpa.
See? Told you.
What do you mean?
It's got that booty, that juicy bum, that gon' ride
Oh,
on
that's
high.
fine.
'Cause it talks
Yeah.
like this, talks like this.
Yeah.
It's a numbers,
Got it.
Arm & Hammer Power Sheets. More power to you.
The Weather Channel TV app has you covered for any type of weather. Scan the QR code to try it for free today. Be prepared with the Weather Channel TV app.
Man, remember that time when our iBag
2-minute warning. This is 2 minutes out of the commercial break now.
Light. It's in one face cream.
All right, sir, we're 1:15 out of the commercial break, 1:15.
Copy.
All right, sir, 30 seconds. And one more time, it's Molly and Alex.
With hundreds of free TV channels.
That's breaking news together. These are the big cases that everyone is talking about.
Local news in hundreds of cities.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us here on NBC6.
And thousands of movies and shows.
All right, sir, coming out of the break. It'll be just a moment.
It's time to do free differently. Local Now, free TV that starts in your city.
4 people returned to Earth yesterday from the International Space Station, and what a welcome crew met them in the Gulf off of Florida's coast. How about that? A pod of dolphins were there, either to greet them or just to check out what was going on. A human welcome crew, they lifted the capsule onto the recovery vessel, the last stop before being back on firm ground.
Dolphins are very curious. They're always there. Well, this is the view those astronauts left behind. Earth as seen from the ISS. The space station is bigger than a 6-person house, and on board there's sleeping quarters, 2 bathrooms, and a gym.
But you know, nothing really beats what astronauts see out the window. There's been a continuous human presence at the space station since Expedition 1 arrived in the year 2000.
Now astronauts are preparing for Expedition 73. We have one of those astronauts with us now, Jonny Kim, who is in Star City ahead of the journey aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. Jonny, thank you so much for joining us, which is now evening time here in Star City, Russia. Your launch is set for April 8th, just under 3 weeks from now. How are you going to spend those next 20 days?
Hi, Molly and Alex. So we are wrapping up final training and preparations here in Star City. In a couple of days, we'll be flying to Baikonur and entering quarantine. And that's to ensure all astronauts and cosmonauts go to the space station without bringing any kind of germs. And so after that, once we get in Baikonur, it's going to start getting real. We're going to start looking at our space vehicle, actually getting to inspect the contents. And we're all looking forward to it.
And you mentioned wrapping up training. How long have you been training for this mission?
Well, for me, it's been about 1.5 years, which is pretty average for most astronauts before they're assigned to an expedition.
And once you're in orbit, what is it that you're going to be studying there?
Everything from material science to climate change to ourselves. The human body is one of the most, is probably the most instrumental part of human spaceflight. And so there is a very interesting experiment that I'm going to be a part of called CIPHER. And it stands for the Complement of Integrated Protocols for Human Exploration Research. And now this research project was born from a previous study on the human body and the effects that long duration spaceflight can have. And so what we at NASA, in collaboration with our international partners, is hoping to find out what exactly happens to the human body from these various time frames so that when we start venturing out further to the moon, Mars, and beyond, and when we're in space for long durations, how our bodies respond and what we can do to ensure that we're optimized for success.
Now, having said that, how long are you expecting to be up there?
My mission will be 8 months, but as always at NASA, we adapt to the unknown, and so we'll be ready for anything.
The view from the International Space Station and from orbit is like no other. Is there any sort of weather on Earth that you're hoping to see from that vantage point that is a truly once in a lifetime experience?
I think Mother Nature is one of the most awe-inspiring and frightening things. And the more we can do as astronauts to share some of that with our loved ones and people living on Earth, I think the better. And so I don't think I have a favorite, but I'm looking forward to trying to capture some of that beauty and share it with everyone.
Yeah, we certainly can't wait to see it for sure. Now, this is your first trip to space, so give us a sense. How are you feeling right now, so close to it?
To be honest, it's not real yet for me. And I think a lot of that happens to do with the training we get. We as astronauts and operators are really good at compartmentalizing. And what that means is, especially during stressful times, is being able to lock away those emotions and put them in a room in your brain and deal with it when you need to. And I think this is something that parallels a lot of the other disciplines that can potentially have stressful environments. And so for me, it doesn't quite feel real yet. But I think as we get to Baikonur and we start inspecting our space vehicle, it's going to become very real.
Well, Jonny Kim, thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck to you here as you wrap training up and also head out into outer space. One time.
Thank you, Alex. Molly.
Thank you, sir. Good luck to you. Stay safe, stay well, and we're happy to have you there representing USA. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stay well. You betcha.
Without the extra work, has a built-in solution.